Hi everyone. You'll notice that I'm wearing a different shirt than I was wearing in the presentation. I do apologize that the presentation didn't actually record yesterday as I thought it was recording. So here I am, it's Thursday afternoon, so I'm going to re-record just to make sure that everybody does get the presentation. I do apologize for that. So I will be sharing my screen and you can see the presentation as it was yesterday, and we'll go from there. Again, apologies, but I want to make sure you get the content. Okay, here we go. So Iceland, the best ways to visit. This is the same presentation as yesterday, so I'll just continue on ahead. So who am I? My name is Shauna Cook. I am a top of the world and Scandinavia specialist here at Great Canadian Travel. I've been with the company for about 8 years, just shy of 8 years. And as it says here, I specialize in the top of the world in Scandinavia. This includes Iceland, Greenland, the Faroe Islands, Russia, the Baltics, Scandinavia, and I also do some expedition cruising, including the Arctic and Antarctic. My personal and professional travels have let me travel fairly extensively in these areas, and it's very rewarding to visit these areas, and I can't wait to help get some of you guys up there. So who are we? We are a group of people who love to travel to unique and underexplored areas. We've been around since the early 1980s, and we are one of the first companies to operate polar bear trips to Churchill. We love unique and off the beaten path locales. Africa, Greenland, Scandinavia, Antarctica, Faroe Islands, and of course Iceland are all areas that we specialize in. But because we are a full service agency, we can help you with any destination you're interested in. These are just the particulars that we have specialists in. So our main office is located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We'd like to acknowledge that Winnipeg is located on Treaty 1 land, the original land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, Lakota, and Dene peoples. It is the homeland of the Métis Nation. We do this to recognize and express gratitude to the First Nations and Métis land that we are on. So now COVID-19 is of course on everybody's mind these days. We are starting to come to an end. We can see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not kind of clear yet. There are still some restrictions when it comes to traveling abroad. Iceland is open for all intents and purposes, but here are some rules that do need to be followed. So in short, if you're fully vaccinated or can show proof of a past COVID-19 infection, you are able to enter Iceland and expect to quarantine for less than 24 hours. All travelers must pre-register at visit.covid.is. This must be done 72 hours prior to arrival in Iceland. There's no need to provide a negative COVID-19 test to enter Iceland if you're already vaccinated. You'll be tested on arrival at Keflavik Airport. There's no charge for this test, and then you must transfer immediately to your first night of accommodation and self-isolate until your negative test results are presented. Most times these tests are being presented within 6 to 8 hours from the time you take the test in the morning on arrival, usually by 8 p.m. on day of arrival, but they're guaranteed within 24 hours. So once your results are texted to you, you're free to explore. Once you're in Iceland, you must register at travel.covid.is. This will allow you to have access to the local lab information and set up testing prior to your return trip home. Currently, the US and Canada do both require a negative COVID-19 test to be presented prior to arrival. I believe both countries do require it to be a PCR test, and rapid testing is not available in Iceland yet. This test must be taken no more than 72 hours prior to departure back to the US. The test results in Iceland will be returned within 24 hours of testing. There are many labs around the country, however, they do not take appointments, and most have extremely limited hours. 1 hour openings per day for some of the ones in the countryside. One of the ones in the south of Iceland, in the Western Islands, I believe is actually only 15 minutes. But using the barcode system at travel.covid.is, they know you're coming that day, so they expect a certain amount of people to be there. So this will provide you with the best lab to visit based on your itinerary, your departure date, and when you actually request the testing to take place. If you're not vaccinated, nor can show proof of a past COVID-19 infection, there are more steps to follow. In addition to most of the above information, you'll need to provide a negative COVID-19 test prior to arrival in Iceland. Once you've arrived and tested, you must quarantine in a state-approved quarantine facility free of charge. Now, this sounds a bit daunting. It's not a prison, it's not a cement block. There are just 3- and 4-star hotels in Reykjavik that have been closed down to general public to be used as quarantine facilities. This quarantine will last 5 days, and you'll be retested at the end of the quarantine. If you test negative at that point, then you're free to explore Iceland. Social distancing rules of 2 meters are in effect. Face masks must be worn when the 2-meter rule cannot be kept. Face masks must be used in public transport, including but not limited to taxis, buses, tour buses, private vehicles being used for touring purposes. They must also be worn in shops and other indoor locations. So I had a meeting with one of our Icelandic suppliers over Zoom a couple of days ago, and she did indicate that a lot of these social distancing and mask rules particularly have actually been kind of taken away in Iceland. Masks are not really being widely worn. Some shops don't require them anymore. Some indoor locations don't require them, but it's always a good idea to have a couple of masks with you in case you are required. There is an expectation of an announcement coming on June 15th that could, it's definitely going to ease restrictions. We don't know what it means yet, what restrictions are going to be taken away. So there'll be an update on June 15th, which means our next presentation next Wednesday will have an update on that information. So now for the fun stuff. So the first way to explore Iceland we're going to talk about is a Reykjavik stopover / city stay. So these are kind of the same thing. A city stay, so basically you're basing in Reykjavik for 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights, and you'll do day trips from there. The Reykjavik Stopover program is a program that's offered by Icelandair. So say, for example, you're flying from Toronto to London in Icelandair, your flight will always connect through Iceland. Because it's their state airline, it's always going to connect through there. So instead of connecting on through, the airline encourages people to stop and visit and explore Iceland. So for this reason, your ticket will not cost more if you break that ticket and actually stop and stay in Iceland. Typically, airlines will charge you more to do this. Icelandair actually encourages it. So of course, you have to pay for any of your land arrangements, but your plane ticket itself won't be any more expensive. So we do this quite a lot for people, and this is how they get their first taste of Iceland. And most people will come back after and just want to do an in-depth Iceland trip. So we do suggest for doing a Reykjavik stopover on the way back from your European trip, just because it works a bit better for timings with flight information, but whatever you prefer, whatever works best for your schedule, we're happy to facilitate with you. So a few things showing here in Reykjavik. So the top left-hand corner is a map of the city center of Reykjavik. Lake Tjornin is where it says City Pond. That's actually called Lake Tjornin, but it is a pond. That's kind of the main focal point in the town. On this map, you'll see the red lines. Those indicate pedestrian-only areas. So it just means that no cars can go along here. The exceptions are taxis and private transportation vehicles. So there is a little bit of traffic going around, but in the gray area you see very central where it says flea market with the red dot, that area is completely car free. So you don't have to worry about vehicles in that region. In the middle on the top, you see another map, and this map is the tourist bus stop map. So there are public buses, obviously, in Reykjavik. They have their own designated stops that are different from these stops. These, about 3 or 4 years ago, Reykjavik started to implement the new rules where cars couldn't go down certain areas. Tour buses already have a hard time getting down some of the streets because they're quite narrow. So what they did is they actually designated these, I believe there's 16 stops in total, to strictly be for tour bus transfer pickup. So it can be challenging if you're in the middle of that gray area. Sometimes you're walking 5 or 6 minutes to a bus stop that you maybe don't know where it is. I get it, it can be challenging. We can arrange private transportation from the airport. So on arrival, at the very least, you're taken directly to your hotel, so you don't have to worry about a bus stop. Alternatively, what we try to do is we try to book hotels in the areas where you see 1, 2, and 3. And there's also a great hotel in the region of where number 5 is on the map. This means there's a bus stop either right outside of your hotel or within a 2 or 3 minute walk, so they're easily accessible. This just makes the bus collection and the tourist areas downtown Reykjavik a bit less congested with tour buses. So next to that on the top row on the right, this is probably the most famous restaurant in Iceland. It's called Bjarnin's Betstu Pilser, sorry for my pronunciation. It's basically it's the Icelandic hot dog. So hot dogs are probably the most famous food in Iceland. This stand being the most famous of all of the ones in the country. This one's located right downtown next to the Radisson Blu Hotel. And you'll always see a line up here. And actually, a lot of times you'll see locals lining up as well. So that's always a good sign when you see locals lining up for something, because you know it's good. The last time I was there, I believe it cost around 450 or 490 ISK for a hot dog. It's about $5, $5.25. So it seems a lot for a hot dog, but comparing to the prices of food in Iceland, it's actually quite a cheap snack. So the bottom left-hand corner, you see I just pulled from Google Maps, just a map to give you an idea of the distance between Keflavik Airport and the Reykjavik city center. So Google Maps does say 50 kilometers or 43 minutes. We actually say about an hour total. Google Maps isn't always accurate, especially for Iceland, because it doesn't account for some of the areas with slower speeds, roundabouts, and traffic jams. So we say about an hour. And in the bottom right corner, I did get a question after the last presentation about Harka Concert Hall. I had a photo during the day, and I was explaining how the glass panels light up to represent northern lights. This is a photo of at night, just to give you an idea of the lighting. It does still color, so it does look like lights still dancing. I just don't have a video to show you of it. So there are 3 main full-day sightseeing tours that are done from Reykjavik on a stopover or a city stay. These 3 tours will give you such a great overview of the southern and western part of the region. It'll make you feel like you've seen a lot, even if you've only got a couple of days. So the main tour, if you only do one tour, this is the one we recommend. It's called the Golden Circle. If you've done any research or looking into Iceland at all, you've heard of this region. The 3 main popular attractions are the Gullfoss waterfall in the top right, Thingvellir National Park in the bottom right, that's the Prime Minister's summer house there in the photo, and Strokir Geyser, which is the geyser that still erupts. Geyser, the namesake geyser, is right next to it, but it no longer erupts anymore. During these tours, the drivers do also take kind of liberties with some stops, where they've got secret stops, their favorite stops. They're never going to be disappointed. This particular tour is between 8 and 9 hours, so it's full day, depending on the time of the year. It leaves at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Later in the season, when the days are getting shorter for daylight, they leave at 9 o'clock, but through the summer months, they leave at 8 o'clock. Next tour is the South Shore tour. So this is the second most popular option. If you've got 2 days, we recommend Golden Circle and South Coast. So this just shows another map here. It starts in Reykjavik and then goes all along the south coast to the point marker D with the green point. Once you get here, you do just turn around and go back. You do follow the same route back. So the driver will never make all of the stops in one direction. So there'll be stops going both ways. The top right corner is Reynisfjara. This is the black sand beach. And this photo does show just how black the sand really is. It's also the basalt columns here, which is famous in this area. Just off the photo to the left, there is a cave you can actually kind of go in to explore. And then there's the columns out of the water as well. And I mentioned this yesterday. I said I didn't realize when I was putting this together, the presentation. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is the village of Vik. And actually just off the coast, you can see some columns sticking out of the water at the end of the cliff. This is actually the same cliff and the same columns, but from the other side of the mountain. So it just kind of shows the relation. You can see a little black sand beach there along the coastline as well. So it's the same coastline, and Reynisfjara is just on the other side of the mountain. In the middle at the bottom, you do see Seljellandsfoss. This is the waterfall that you can walk behind. So it's really popular for that reason, but keep in mind you do need your raincoat because you will get wet. It can be slippery too, so just watch your footing. And then the right-hand side at the bottom is Skogafoss. This is probably one of the most visited waterfalls in Iceland, just because it's so easily accessible and you can see it from the main road. So this particular picture was taken from the edge of the parking lot, so really accessible for people to get to. The final kind of main 3 tours that are possible from Reykjavik is on a stopover. There are tons of other options based on your interests. There's lava caves, there's glacier walking, hikes, snowmobiling, ATV. So there's some really fun adventurous tours, as well as some sightseeing tours for scenery. So these are just the 3 main options. We can put pretty much anything that's available. We can put that in there for you. This one's the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. At the bottom left-hand side, you'll see a map of the route. Just to kind of show you, this one kind of goes a bit north and the western peninsula. So the top left-hand corner picture, this is Djúpalausandur Black Sand Beach. So again, Black Sand Beach, like in Reynisfjara in the south coast, this one's just a bit more wide open. This is also home of the Djúpalausandur lifting stones. So I mentioned these yesterday as well during the presentation. So there's several stones. The lightest one, I believe, was 23 kilograms, and the heaviest one goes up to 155 kilograms. And back in the days of the heavy fishing area in this area, the fishermen would actually test their strength to see how good of a fisherman they were. And they would judge that based on which stone they could lift. I have tried to lift them. I could lift a couple of the smaller ones, but not the heavier ones. They're heavier than they look, that's for sure. The top right-hand corner is Vatnaskjöld Lava Cave. So I've done this tour as well. The metal silo you kind of see in the middle, this is the part that some people do have issues with because it's a really closed-in area with a really tight kind of spiral metal staircase that goes down underground. This opens up to a larger cave system underneath. So once you're down, you're not as closed in. It's just if you've got an issue with small spaces, that could be a bit daunting for some people. It's a really easy tour to do. It's about 45 minutes long, and it's just a cool way to see a cave that's really easily accessible. In the bottom in the middle, you see Búðir Church. This is one of the most famous churches in Iceland just because of the black design. There are also some really old relics inside, including the altarpiece and one of the candlesticks. They date back from the 1600s. It is possible to do weddings here. I've booked a wedding at this church for a couple before. It can be challenging. There's a lot of legalities involved with an Icelandic wedding, but it is possible as long as you've got the time to look into it, because you do require some time in Reykjavik dealing with the legal paperwork before you can head out to the countryside. There's also Hotel Búðir, which is very close by, so you can arrange a reception, or if that's where you want your overnight accommodation. It is one of the more deluxe properties in Iceland. And then the bottom right-hand corner is Mount Kirkjufell. So again, this is also pictured behind me with the Northern Lights. This is the most photographed mountain in Iceland. And if you are a fan of Game of Thrones, of course, you'll recognize this from one of the filming locations. So this isn't a day trip per se, but during September to April, it's very popular to add on a Northern Lights tour from Reykjavik. These are really popular. We can pre-book them before you go, and we do in fact do that. However, if you want to wait to see what the weather is going to be, these are locally, you can book these locally as well, but you do risk the space not being there if you do that. So there's a couple of different ways to do this from Reykjavik. The first one is the top left. It's maybe hard to see, but it's the best photo I could find. They're actually on a whale watching ship. So during the daytime, it'll take you up to see whales. At nighttime, they actually take you out to see the Northern Lights. So you'll also see a bit of the Reykjavik city's lights on the horizon there. So they take you as far away as they can from the city, and then you get a great view of the lights. This can be a rocky option sometimes if the weather is a little bit unpredictable. So just keep it in mind if you suffer from seasickness at all. And the top right, you do see a super Jeep. So these are vehicles that are pretty unique to Iceland, actually. They're kind of souped up Land Rovers, Land Cruisers. They've got large tires on them. They're able to go off-road. They travel through rivers, up the side of glaciers. In this case, they'll actually take you through some rougher terrain to get off the main beaten path to find a great viewing location for the Northern Lights. It has been a more expensive option because it's smaller groups. This particular vehicle would only hold 4 people, but they do have super Jeep type vans, I guess you could say, that hold up to 18. You can see here, this is on a bit of a dirt path, an area that a motor coach would never be able to get back into. It just gives you a better way to kind of get off the beaten path. The bottom right-hand corner is a mini coach. This is the most common way to do this in Iceland and the most economical. These mini coach tours run between $90 and $110 or so. So they're an inexpensive way to go Northern Lights viewing. They can't get as quite off the beaten path as the Super Jeeps, but they still have some great viewing areas to go to. And the bottom left-hand side, this one's not nearly as common, but I did want to include it because it is possible. The photo's been taken from over Reykjavik City, so you can see all the lights below and then the Northern Lights above. I have seen them from the city once, but they looked more like the picture on the right, a bit fainter, kind of fuzzy green, not the vibrance that you see there. That would be a very rare occurrence, but it can happen. The second option for exploring Iceland we're going to talk about is self-drives. So this is a pretty common way for especially North Americans to visit, because driving in Iceland is very similar to driving to most places in Canada and the US. There's no 4-lane highways. There's only one, in Reykjavik, but everything else around the country is just dual lane. Really easy to get around. And automatics are fairly readily available. Manual transmission is the norm. So if you're comfortable driving manual, no issues. Automatics, as I mentioned, can be a bit trickier to get, but we've never had an issue actually sourcing one, but they do sell out quicker. So the first self-drive is the top left-hand corner. This particular one focuses mainly on the West Fjords, which if you were with us last week, I mentioned is kind of an underexplored area. It's quite rugged, so we do require you to have a 4-wheel drive vehicle to visit this area. This area, most people won't do a self-drive just to this region if it's their first time in Iceland. Typically, people who are doing this kind of itinerary have been once or twice, and this is the area they happen to miss. or they're hikers, photographers, birders, because this is a really big birding area where the number 4 is showing up on this map, on the top left map. This is Reykjavik Bird Cliffs, so it's one of the biggest bird cliffs in the country. So for birding, this is a really popular area. On the top in the middle, we see a tour that focuses on the Golden Circle and the South Coast. So this shows 6 days. We could probably do it in a 4-day time period as well. Your days would be a bit more crammed, but it's definitely possible. This is for people who don't quite have enough time to dedicate to go all the way around Iceland, or everything they want to see is in the South Coast. Maybe there's an ice cave they want to visit, a couple waterfalls, and that's kind of what you want to do. This itinerary is perfect for you. Next to that, similar to the one in the middle, on the right-hand side at the top, is a tour that focuses on the south, but also adds in the west. So this gives you a really great overview of that south and west region, like a city stopover would do, but this when you're driving yourself. So we also provide detailed itineraries, turn-by-turn directions. A GPS is included with your car rental, so it's easy to get around. And like I said, Iceland is very easy to drive in. So the bottom left-hand corner, this is probably one of the most comprehensive itineraries we could do for you. This mentioned 16 days. I've had one couple that did 22 days. They just wanted to have a little bit more time in a few of the areas, maybe spend the night, maybe do a full day hike or something like that. So we can do this at a more leisurely pace. It also is the full circle, including the West Fjords and the Staples Peninsula back down to Reykjavik. So that does require easily 2 weeks to do. 16 days is generous to do this in. And we can, like I said, we can extend it for longer as well. In the middle and the bottom, similar itinerary. This one omits the West Fjords. So you're taking away 3 or 4 days right off the bat here. And does the Snæfellsnes Peninsula back to Reykjavik. This is quite a common route to do as well for people. This mentions 9 days. That's pretty accurate. We could probably do it in 8 days, but I wouldn't recommend anything less than that. And then the right-hand side at the bottom, excuse me for just 1 second. Sorry, the right-hand side at the bottom, this is the typical circle ring road tour. So if you've got a week, and you want to see as much as possible, this is the itinerary for you. We would try to get you up to 8 or 9 days if we could. However, if you only have that 1 week time period, you're still going to be able to see a lot. Your days are just going to be slightly longer for driving, and you may not be able to do the hikes that you want to do or the tours you want to do along the way, but you're still going to see quite a bit of the countryside. So just a few pictures to explain some things about self-driving in Iceland. Last week I touched briefly on the single lane bridges in Iceland. The top left-hand corner just shows this. So it shows the double lane road coming up to it, and that the bridge is only single lane. You do see the sign here that warns you to yield to oncoming traffic. It is in Icelandic, but hopefully the signs are fairly self-explanatory. And they work pretty well. You just kind of alternate people if there's a lineup. So it can increase your driving times, which is why listening to things like Google Maps is not always the best idea. These bridges are fairly common in the south coast and along the east as well, so it's something to be prepared for. I also talked about tunnels. So there are a couple of tunnels, one that goes under the fjord, a couple that go through mountains. So these are things to take into consideration as well. The single lane road comes into play in tunnels as well. The middle picture at the top dictates that the white car is in a pull-off area and you see headlights coming towards the car. This car has pulled off, so the traffic coming at it can pass through. Not all areas of the tunnel are single lane, but there are portions that are. So if you're on the pull-out side, you do have to pull over if you see lights coming. Headlights being on is mandatory at all times in Iceland. So daytime, height of the summer when it's 24 hours of daylight, it is still required for headlights. This helps in the tunnels because you can see when the cars are coming. One picture, I couldn't find a great picture of it. Another thing that's fairly common, especially in the tunnel that goes under the fjord, which is the bottom left, which I'll talk about in just a second, there is a roundabout. So it's interesting. It works similar to a roundabout above the ground, but it's interesting that the engineering going into that allows the roundabout to actually facilitate and work well underground as well. So the bottom left and the top right are entrances and exits to tunnels. The top right is the one that goes through a mountain, and the bottom left is the one that goes under the fjord. So the entrances and exits look a little bit different, but the tunnels will obviously look the same inside. The bottom in the middle, this is driving in the winter time. So I talked a little bit about this last time. You really need to be prepared for any adverse driving conditions in the wintertime. Like I said, I grew up in Canada. I grew up just north of Toronto in an area prone to snow squalls. I now live in Winnipeg, which is, I mean, most people know it's not the greatest winters here. I'm very comfortable driving in the snow in the winter weather. I would not drive in the wintertime in Iceland. I don't want to discourage you. That's just my personal comfort level based on my experience. If you are thinking about it, it's a good idea to go to YouTube and find some videos of winter driving. There are some good ones that really show a realistic interpretation of driving in Iceland in the wintertime. We will book that for you. It's no problem. We're happy to do it. But we do require you to have a high-sitting four-wheel drive vehicle like you see in this picture. I can't tell exactly what it is. It looks like it might be a Land Cruiser, but it has to be high-sitting, so an SUV, and it has to be four-wheel drive. Now, next to that, you do see just some sheep crossing the road. This is common in Iceland. There are over 800,000 sheep in Iceland and less than 400,000 people. So lots of sheep, and the roads here, this is a pretty common road. There's no fences along the road. So they do roam freely crossing the road. And unfortunately, they do get hit sometimes. It just happens sometimes. We can't avoid it. You will not be fined or charged for this unless it is found out that you did it maliciously or intentionally. But we do need you to call the police right away because the police can help track the sheep because each sheep is tagged and owned by a farmer, and the farmer would need to know that one of his flock has been killed. So again, you're not in trouble, you're not going to get fined, you're not going to get charged. This is just to help the farmer out. It's just common courtesy because this is their livelihood, of course. It just helps them to find out that this has happened. So escorted tours. This is probably the most common way for people to visit Iceland outside of Reykjavik without driving. Excuse me. This particular tour is probably the longest tour that's offered for an escorted program. It's 11 nights. The reason it's so long is it does include the West Fjords. You'll see there on the left-hand side. Again, it's super uncommon for this to be included in an escorted program. So if you're trying to see as much as you can, this is a great program to do. Because it goes to the West Fjords, it does have to use a four-wheel drive vehicle, which is a smaller coach, meaning it is a small group at maximum 20 people. This does bring the price point up a bit, but it's a really comprehensive tour. It runs between June and August, just because that's when the weather is best, especially in the West Fjords. And it's quite a popular departure as well. So it's the complete circle, including the Snæfellsnes Peninsula and the West Fjords. You visit all 3 national parks, Thingvellir, Vatnajökull, and Snæfellsnes. You take the ferry, which is included from the West Fjords south to the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. And then you also get to take the boat trip in the ice between the icebergs at Jökulsárlón Lagoon on the south coast. That's about where the A is on the bottom. I know there's a couple of A's on the bottom, kind of right of the map underneath the green. There's an A, B, and a C right close together. The A is about Jökulsárlón. This one is the Guided Iceland Circle. This is probably the most popular tour because it's the full circle of Iceland, and it's 7 nights, so it's a great length coming from North America. We don't get a ton of holidays, so this is a great length of tour as well. It's a complete circle, like I said, but it does not do the Snæfellsnes Peninsula or the West Fjords, but it does the other most common areas. This one visits 2 national parks, Thingvellir and Vatnajökull. You also see the Golden Circle, and you also get to see Jökulsárlón Lagoon on this as well with the icebergs. And in Akureyri in the far north, you do have the option to add on whale watching as well. So here are a couple of Northern Lights programs. So these are in the wintertime. So they typically start kind of mid-October and they run through about the end of March. This particular tour is a 7-night program and has an 85 to 95% chance of seeing the Northern Lights historically. So that's great odds. You climb a volcano crater and walk between 2 continents, which is really neat. You visit a traditional shark farmer, a turf homestead, and churches. This, because it's a longer program at 7 nights, you get 5 nights out in the countryside doing Northern Lights viewing. So the interesting thing for Northern Lights viewing in the countryside is you're already outside where there's no lights. Whereas if you're in Reykjavik, you take a bus or a boat to another location to get away from the lights. Whereas on these tours, you're already in the countryside. So you just walk outside and you can sit on the lawn of the hotel, but there's sometimes chairs set up, there's sometimes little viewing platforms, and you can just sit and watch the lights come. The countryside hotels also offer a unique program called the Northern Lights Wake Up Program. So you can either sign up, you can sign up at the front desk and they'll either call you or knock on your door. It depends on the size of the hotel and their particular policy. But if the lights do show, even if it's 3 a.m., they will let you know. You can make the decision if you want to go out or if you want to stay inside and maybe miss that night. This particular tour has 2 options and price points for sizing. So it's 16 people or 45 people. Obviously, the 16 passenger will be more expensive because it's a smaller vehicle, but both options are there. This one visits the south coast and the west coast again. So these, as you'll see, it's pretty consistent. These are the most visited areas and the easiest accessible from Reykjavik. This one is a shorter one, so if you're really short on time, it's only 4 nights. It just visits the south coast, but again, you get 2. This one gives you 2 nights in the countryside to visit the Northern Lights. You visit Vatnajökull Glacier, the Jökulsárlón Lagoon, and Diamond Beach to see the icebergs. You visit hot springs, lava fields, and the volcano crater. And in Reykjavik, you actually have the option to add on the Northern Lights cruise that we talked about earlier, as well as an ice cave tour in the countryside. Okay, a couple holiday themed tours. This first one is the Northern Lights Festival. It departs on December 29th every year, and it's 4 nights long. So you spend New Year's Eve in Reykjavik. So New Year's in Reykjavik is one of the coolest things. I was supposed to be there for 2020 into 2021, but with COVID, we all know how that probably turned out. So I didn't get to go. I'm hoping one of these years I'll get to go. The fireworks displays and the bonfires are just incredible. I've heard from clients that have been. So bonfires are quite common in Reykjavik on New Year's Eve. You'll see them all over the place, different neighborhoods, communities coming together, neighbors chatting, bringing in the new year together. It's a really kind of communal feeling. It's really welcoming. So you'll enjoy a dinner on New Year's Eve, which is several courses. You'll do a bonfire and Christmas light tour. And then from there, you'll actually go to the harbor and board that whale watching boat we talked about earlier. But instead of going to see Northern Lights, you'll actually go into the harbor to watch all the fireworks. Now, Iceland, they don't put off fireworks any time of the year except for New Year's Eve. And the sale of fireworks is actually beneficial to their search and rescue program. So the Search and Rescue Association sells fireworks to raise money for their equipment, their training. So everybody buys fireworks. So it's not just one display that goes off in the harbor. It's all over the city. People do it in the backyards, on the main streets. It's everywhere. So seeing all these displays of fireworks go off, I watch it on a live feed every year on the internet. It's really cool to see. So after you've enjoyed that, you have a relaxing day the next day to visit the Blue Lagoon. You do also visit some waterfalls, the geyser, and hot springs. This one also has the option to add on the Northern Lights cruise as well. So this one should have been before the slide, and I should have changed that for this redo of the presentation. This is the Christmas tour. So this one starts on December 23rd every year for 4 nights and can be combined with the New Year's Eve one if you'd like. So you spend Christmas in Reykjavik. So Christmas Eve is the most popular day during the holidays for Icelanders. You'll find that there's no scheduled sightseeing day tours that day. The stores will all close at 12 o'clock. Most of the restaurants will be closed completely that day because people are expected to be at home with their family for dinner at 6 o'clock. It's just tradition, and Icelanders are very traditional. There'll be restaurants open in the hotels because people are visiting and they need to be taken care of, obviously, but standalone restaurants will typically be closed. So Christmas Eve, you do have a festive dinner included. That's a set menu for this tour. And then the 26th, you get to enjoy a culinary experience in Reykjavik. Every year this is a bit different, but usually involves a bit of a food walk, some tastings, watching some food being prepared. December 25th is kind of just like any other day. It's similar to our Boxing Day. People are out bustling on the streets again, enjoying family. So it's a little bit different from what we're used to here. And then this tour also visits the South Coast and the Golden Circle. So not only do you get Christmas in Iceland, you get some great overview of the scenery as well. The last mode of transportation we're going to talk about is cruising. So all kinds of cruise companies are now offering tours to Iceland, which is fantastic. Small ships, large ships. I was cruising once and I saw a large ship that was, I don't know the passenger count, but I would say it was probably around 2,500 people on the ship. And there was no way they were stopping at some of these smaller ports because the harbors are impossible to get into. This first company is Iceland Pro Cruise. I did have the opportunity to sail with them a couple years ago on their Iceland circumnavigation, which is the itinerary on the left-hand side of the screen. It's a 10-day voyage. It starts and ends in Reykjavik, and it goes clockwise around Iceland. So Stikisholmur, Ísafjörður, Siglufjörður, Hrísey, Húsavík, Seyðisfjörður, Djúpivogur, and then Westman Islands, and then back to Reykjavik. So these are kind of the main ports that the cruises can get into. And then from each port, there'll be several different shore excursions that you can choose from. That they do cost additional, but you can choose what you'd like to do, or you can just walk around the town if you'd like. And you can really see a lot of Iceland doing it this way. The one next to it is the best of Iceland. This is a very similar itinerary. You can see it's almost the exact same. But in the north, it does not visit Siglufjordur. It does not visit Hrísey, and it goes all the way down to Akureyri instead. They do not dock at Húsavík, but they do kind of anchor out off the coast in Skalfjandi. So this is to do some whale watching. On the east coast, they don't stop in Seyðisfjörður. They go all the way to Djúpivogur, and then they continue back to Reykjavik as the original one does as well. So this is the MS Ocean Diamond. This is the ship that they use. So it's not your typical cruise ship that you may have had in mind. There's no casinos, there's no dance parties, there's no evening shows. It's very expedition driven, which a lot of the ships we sell in particular in Iceland are. We're happy to help with any option, obviously, but the ones we offer are smaller ships, just so they can get into some of these smaller ports and kind of give you that more authentic feel. This ship's actually entering the port at the Westman Islands on the south coast, I'm sorry. And it's a really narrow channel. And most of these cruises do go at a time when puffins are around. And a little bit further on, not shown in the picture, it's all bird cliffs. There's thousands and thousands of puffins just gathering on the side. Really cool to see. This particular ship is used by another company in our winter season to do Antarctica cruising. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the type of ship. It's built for strength of ice, to like ice haul, to plow through ice. It's not going to be an issue in Iceland, but that's the type of ship that it is. It's very expedition focused. On the left-hand side, it's just a picture of the deck plan. Most of our clients do book the cabins on deck 3, which are double cabins with portholes. So every cabin has a window. It could be porthole or picture window. If you're all right with a porthole, you don't spend very much time in your cabins anyways. This deck 3 is perfect for you. If you want a window, a bit more space, deck 4, the orangey colored cabins, those ones will have picture windows in them. If you want a bit more comfort and space, they're quite a bit more expensive, but on deck 7, there are some balcony cabins. So I've seen these cabins, they're beautiful, but the weather in Iceland isn't really conducive to requiring a balcony. But if you'd like one, obviously we're going to help you out with that. The next one we're going to look at is Adventure Canada. So this is a Canadian-based expedition company. They also offer an Iceland circumnavigation, which is very similar to the one we just talked about. They do have a couple of set ports. So you'll see that Westman Islands is a set port, Akureyri, Seyðisfjörður. Those are the set ports. Other than that, they just kind of decide on the day or the day prior where they're going to stop. So around the Snæfellsnes Peninsula or the West Fjords, they'll pick a location, they'll come to shore, you'll do some walking, you do some hiking. So it's really nature focused. And it's very education focused. So this one's a little bit different in the sense it's not a set itinerary with set ports, but sometimes that's part of the excitement. The one next to it, it's a bit different. I wanted to include it though. It starts in northern Scotland in Aberdeen. It goes up to Kirkwall and Faroe Island, Scotland, and then it comes across to the Faroe Islands, spends a couple of days in the Faroe Islands, and then comes across and ends in Iceland. So we can actually do a little bit of a customized land package for you at the end of this, which I've done for some clients in the past, just to give you an overview of Iceland as well while you're there. It's just a bit of a unique itinerary. It's quite a popular itinerary to see a couple of different countries on one voyage. So again, here's the MS Ocean Endeavour. I've not been on this ship. I was supposed to be on the itinerary on the previous page that starts in Scotland and ends in Iceland. I was supposed to do it this year, but COVID. So I'm rebooked for next year on a different adventure. So but the colleagues of mine that I know that have been on this ship, they said it's very similar to the Ocean Diamond. It's a little bit bigger, but still very expedition focused, but very comfortable. The comfort on board, we don't want you to think that it's very cold and stark. The cabins are very comfortable and clean. The food is amazing. It's just very much education focused. This is again on the left-hand side, just an idea of the cabin overview. This particular ship does have some interior cabin options. You'll see there on deck 5, those cabins that are yellow in the middle, those are interior cabins. So it's a good price point for some clients that may be on a budget. Again, you don't spend very much time in your cabin, so if you really don't mind not seeing out of a window, these cabins are great for you. The last company I want to mention is Hurtigruten. So this is the Norwegian expedition company. They are most known for their coastal voyages in Norway, as well as their Antarctica expeditions, but they do offer expeditions in other parts of the world as well. So they also do have an Iceland circumnavigation. Again, their itinerary does vary a little bit as well. You'll see it stops in Petriksfjordur and Djupavik in the north and the west fjords instead of Isafjordur. So they stop in some of the smaller ports. Again, they're going to do some walking, some hiking, very nature-focused excursions. This one stops in Grimsey, which is the only place in Iceland you'll see on this map. It kind of straddles the Arctic Circle. It's the only place in Iceland on land you can actually cross the Arctic Circle, which I did address a little bit in my presentation last week, but it's literally a step up over a little platform and a step down, and then you cross the Arctic Circle and you get a certificate for it and everything. So it's really cool to do. In the middle, this is a unique itinerary actually that starts and ends in Liverpool in the UK. And it actually travels up through Scotland, the Outer Hebrides, and into the Orkney Islands, one way and then one coming back. And then it does an almost full circumnavigation of Iceland. You just miss a bit on the south and the east portion. But then when you're coming back, you go into the Orkney Islands, come back down to Liverpool. So this is a longer itinerary, but it includes the Hebrides and the Orkney Islands because these also are very Viking focused in their history. So this is a really cool way to combine those two countries because the history does overlap quite a bit. And then next to that is a similar itinerary. This one is just a one-way option though, from Liverpool up to the Outer Hebrides and does a partial circumnavigation around Iceland back to Reykjavik. And again, we can do a customized land program if you want to do that ending in Reykjavik, or you can just head home from there, whichever you prefer. So these two itineraries are a little bit unique as well, but I wanted to include them. The first one on the left here, this one will actually start from Oslo, Norway. So you'll fly from Oslo to Longyearbyen, which is on the island of Spitsbergen and Svalbard. This is also part of Norway, but it's off the coast. This is an area popular for polar bears. So these tours do occur at the end of polar bear season, but it's still possible you could see bears. It then comes back down south and stops in Jan Mayen. So Jan Mayen is a Norwegian volcanic island. Nobody lives there permanently, but for people interested in geology and hiking, this is a really great stop that the cruises do make for you. Then it comes down to Akureyri and does a partial circumnavigation ending in Reykjavik. And again, as with the last ones, we can do a little land add-on program for you in Iceland just to see a bit more that you missed. And then the last itinerary here, this one's a unique one as well. I have had clients do this itinerary and really loved it. This one starts from Bergen, Norway, and travels across to Lerwick in the Shetland Islands in Scotland, and then travels up to Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands. You spend a couple of days cruising on the Faroe Islands, and then up to a partial circumnavigation of Iceland here on the top. And then from there, you head north to Jan Mayen, and then further north to Longyearbyen and Svalbard. And then from Svalbard, you'll actually fly back to Oslo. So this itinerary is a bit longer as well, but again, really comprehensive to see several countries that have very similar historical patterns, kind of all interact together. So the ships, depending on the departure date, the year, the itinerary, there could be 3 different ships to use for the last itinerary I talked about from Hardegruden. The ship on the left is the MS Spitsbergen. In the middle is the brand new MS Fridtjof Nansen, and on the right is the MS Fram. So I've been on board the MS Spitsbergen on a Norway itinerary, and it's quite a comfortable ship. The cabins are spacious, everything's fairly fully renovated, and the food is fantastic. So really comfortable ship for cruising. In the middle is the Fridtjof Nansen. I've not been on this ship. This is brand new. I've had clients on the Roald Amundsen, which is its sister ship, so it's identical. And they said it's a really comfortable ship. Everything's, like I said, brand new, and these are hybrid ships. Just these two, though, the Nansen and the Amundsen, they're hybrid ships. So when they're sailing with the hybrid, you don't hear anything. There's no sound. So really great to do some whale watching with. And then on the right is the MS Fram. So this is one of the older ships belonging to the Hurtigruten fleet, but it is fully renovated. People who have done expedition cruising or are kind of aware of Hurtigruten, they're very familiar with this ship. It's a very popular expedition ship. I just wanted to kind of end again with some fun Icelandic words and phrases. So, like I said, it's a tough language, so please forgive my pronunciation. The first one is the raisin at the end of the hot dog, which is rusianen í pilsindana. So a phrase used to describe a pleasant surprise. Example is a glacier hiking to the Case Caves was the raisin at the end of the hot dog. On with butter, áfram með smjörið. So this is a phrase used when you want to tell people you need to get back to work. So for example, hey everybody, this project is due, so get on with the butter. So the next one is totally out driving. So alveg út af aka. Icelanders use this phrase when someone's acting crazy or completely wrong about something. For example, did I make the right decision or am I totally out driving? Thank you for the last time. Takk fyrir síðast. Excuse me. I've heard this phrase in Iceland before. I've had people say it to me as well when I've been visiting. Basically, when Icelanders hang out and they've had a good time, the next time they see you, they'll say this phrase. It basically just means thank you for the last time. I had a great time. It's just a really interesting way for greeting the next time you see somebody after seeing them previously. I think it's really cool. And the last one I've experienced this in Iceland, it's called window weather. It was so guda veður. Window weather is when from the outside the weather looks perfect, but when you leave, it's actually very cold. For example, it looked like today was a perfect day for an outdoor picnic, but when we left the house and we realized it was just window weather. So, like I said, I've experienced that. The weather in Iceland can be very unpredictable. It can look stunningly beautiful and sunny outside, and then you go outside and it's freezing, windy, maybe raining upside down in some places. So it can be interesting that way with weather. So I just want to say takk fyrir og bless. So thank you very much and goodbye. This is my contact information again here on the screen. If you have any questions, you just want to chat about Iceland, maybe get something on the go for later this year or into 2022. This year we are already booking for Iceland. It's been very, very busy for June and July and August of this year. We have mostly our American friends traveling because they have a little bit more freedom to travel and returning home to Iceland. But we're hopeful that some Canadians will be able to get abroad later this year. I'm just going to close this off. Excuse me. And here I am again. Again, thank you so much for joining me for the second in our series of webinars. We've got 2 more, one next Wednesday and one the following Wednesday. I do hope you'll join us for those webinars. If you can't, I will of course email them out afterwards as we did previously. If you have any questions, suggestions for new series that we're going to be doing, we have another one we're thinking of for later in the summertime. But if you have anything you want to learn about, you're curious about, let us know and we're happy to see what we can put together and see what we can do for you. So I'm just going to close this off now. Again, thank you for your time yesterday, and I'm so sorry that it didn't record, but I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.